In the Highlands, we just passed into this new neighborhood, and we're going to do the remaining 5 stops of the Mary Doyle Curran novel, which is called The Parish and the Hill. In a novel called The Parish and the Hill, the parish was St. Jerome's. The mission of St. Jerome's was the church Holy Cross, and Holy Cross was a mission church. So the parish and the hill is talking about St. Jerome's and Holy Cross and how they were connected in, and how she shifted uptown, what a lot of Irish did when they got a lot more money and became a new kind of economic force up here. They had a lot more money to deal with. They built bigger houses. And there's 2 sides to look at. There's the large church made in 1922. So this was made when she was about 9 years old, and she moved up about that time. Now, this Holy Cross has been up here longer than that. In 1902, for 20 years before that, the mission church to our right side was the church for Holy Cross. So both churches are still here. And so she had a church that was a lot like St. Jerome's. A lot of the parishioners the same, but the people were changing their mentality into that, oh, I'm richer now, I can build a bigger home for myself. And we're going to go to one of her houses up in the Highlands. Now, her family had lived downtown for a very long time, and then they moved upwards. And she would hear stories about downtown, and of course her parents would bring her down there. Her grandfather would bring her down there after Mass and go to the parks I told you about. But when she was a young child, she would spend a lot more of her time up here, and she went to school up here. And she lived up here, and I think it was 3 different houses here before she started to college. So she went to school here at the Highland School. She went to Holyoke High School after that, and then she went off to college. And so she spent a lot of time on Hampden Street up here, the higher reaches, where her family had grown up in the lower reaches prior. And so we're going to turn onto Hampden Street. And you can see a lot of business up here nowadays. These same places were used in the past for businesses, so it hasn't changed. Now we're taking a left on the Thorpe Avenue, and Thorpe Avenue was the place that she was born and where she lived until she was about 10 years old. Her house is the brick building on your right-hand side. All right, so that was where she was in her youth. It's a 3-story building. It's in great shape still. Her parents used to live a couple streets up before she was born, but they moved down here. And then after she turned about 10 years old, they moved to another house on Taylor Street, and then another one after that. So they did move around, but that was her main house. And that's what we call the Mary Doyle Curran birthplace and home. And I'm glad it's still around. Okay, now, when she's 5 years old, she started off going to school, and her school was called the Highland School. So we're going to go down there. It's not there anymore, but we're going to see the park that it used to exist at. She said she would get to school in the alleyway and sometimes take her sled and go downhill. That was not true, so it's a fiction because the alleyway is perfectly flat. And I doubt she would ever go down the alleyway too much. Probably some of her older brothers brought her down these streets, probably this street exactly, because this street very quickly, 1 block away, is the park, and it was the school that she was at. So nowadays it's called the Kennedy Park, and it's on your left. And what we're going to do is circle around a bit of this park, And so she would walk that little bit, maybe 2 blocks, let's call it, maybe about 300 yards total at best, to school every day. Okay, and again, it's not enough now. There's one last place to visit, and this is St. Jerome Cemetery. So we're going to go down there. We're now on Lincoln Street, and you can see some of the beautiful homes on this street. They were, of course, the Irish were building gorgeous homes because they had a lot of money now. And the first part of the novel is very happy and about all the work they did. Now the second half of the novel is about how her 2 older brothers developed into alcoholics. They weren't very good workers, couldn't hold jobs for very long. And also about the death of various members of her family, including her mother and father and her grandfather and one of her aunts. And they have some strange parts in it. And there's an extreme difference between the mentality of the first half of the novel and the second half. So her grandparents and her parents and she are buried in St. Jerome Cemetery. So she talks about going there when her grandfather died. And then one of her aunts had died. Oops, I should have been this lane. All right, you can pause it. Now, if you do read this book, and I hope you do, you'll get a good sense of the layout of Holyoke by going on this tour. You'll get to see exactly all the places that she met, and that's important. If you don't come from Holyoke, or if you do and you don't know much about Holyoke, then it's good to see things around here. And the novel is well known by people in Holyoke. It's also well respected by literary people because it's a very literary style of book. Remember, it's fictionalized the whole way through, and so these are certainly aren't events of her life. But in the second half, she talks about how she was very scared whenever her brothers would come home drunk, which they did way too much, and she would go hide behind something like her couch or in her room, and her mother would find her and say, don't worry about her. Her mother was the main